InsightAI, powered by InsightJam.
It's Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and we are back in 2025 with Doug Shannon and our InsightAI podcast for a new year. And I think it's appropriate, Doug, that we talk right out of the box about the speed at the way AI developed last year. It feels like it's hard to keep pace. What is happening, and what can we expect?
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to keep pace. There's massive. Every time you turn around, there's a new thing, a new app, a new company, a new idea, and some of these are fantastic. Some of them we've heard things from battery use technology to research to understanding, and we're looking at it now. The best way I can really describe it is that for every one human year, we're looking at 6 months time for AI to hit their years. So AI is essentially every 6 months hitting another year. This is massive in regards to, for every one of our years, there's 2 years of AI. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing like that much speed and coming much faster that it is hard to keep up. It's hard to see what's going on. You had Sora at the beginning of the year was one of the apps that was like showing some really great stuff. And then now you got like 6 seconds. Now you're doing 30 seconds. We're seeing people able to do video and images to where, before, I think I mentioned, or we've looked at in some of the other episodes that we've done is like, images got us lost, right? We were like, oh man, that caught me, or there's the Turing test right there. Well, now we're at video. Video is showing things to people that they can't keep up. I think we did the Will Smith, eating spaghetti. Well, now it looks spot on. Like it was like Lady and the Tramp, like a spaghetti monster feeding Will Smith, and then like at the end there's like a little tendril of stuff like it. It's very interesting to see how fast it's going. It's going to get much faster.
Well, it's interesting. I actually typed into Google speed of AI development, and Google has an experimental generative AI intro now on all their search results, and it says very specifically that AI is developing rapidly, with its computational power doubling every 6 months. And that is effectively, I don't know, the order of magnitude faster than Moore's Law. Moore's Law was every 2 years.
Right. That's the hardware side, right? It's hardware, software, and now it's boom, boom, boom. And it is, again, computational, the amount of data coming in this, well, actually, it's going to get faster too. Like we already know it's going to get faster because since all the data has been mined, and any new data is coming out. We've seen all the EULAs, every time you sign into any
has
new
all
app,
the data been mined? Has it all been mined? That one blows my mind. Is it really? That's all the data? That's all there is?
From what the researchers have said, all of the written down data, all of the Library of Congress, everything has been mined. And at that point, this is why we're moving into simulated data.
It doesn't seem like we had a lot.
I mean, if you think about like the iPod days and the Zunes and whatnot, and how many songs they can store, and now how much data is digitized, anything that's digitized has been mined, essentially. That's how I would put it. Now,
it's unbelievable.
And this is why you see companies like, I think Microsoft has recently did it. You have a number of other companies that have said, hey, sign this new agreement, or, well, if you're a member, you already signed this agreement. Any data you put into this, like LinkedIn did this, everyone that has human data being put in is now saying, we're going to mine that data for our AI. And this is how they're going to differentiate themselves, right? They're going to say, I control this data set. You can buy my data set, or this is how this kind of works. So everything is being mined because we're at a loss. Like there's only so much data there is. And then now you have simulated data, which means if we're simulating data, we're simulating how data gets inputted, that's just going to be much faster as well. I mean, a calculator is faster than a human abacus. And then now you're going to have simulated data on top of that at the speed of that, not us. So there's a chance that 6 months becomes 3 months very quickly. And then we have 4 years in the span.
Well, it's not going to slow down.
No.
It's just going to get faster. Does this end well? I mean, because to your earlier point, you could call them deep fakes. You could call them, an incredible enablement tool. Depends upon how people use them. But I was blown away by watching AI generated influencers just cranking content. And it's indistinguishable from, given the fact that we can see it on only 2 dimensions effectively, it's indistinguishable from a recorded human.
You have to look at maybe.
And all you're doing is writing scripts, and you're not even doing that anymore. You don't even have to write scripts. You're just basically kind of tuning
an idea and a tune. Yeah. There's good and bad, right? Things that, I think about it like this, like, marble sculptures, they used to take years to make these amazing sculptures. We still can't do that. We've lost that as humans. Like, we could do it because we were done before, obviously. But in regards to how things change, a marble sculpture now would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever to have it done, versus that was like the method.
By hand.
Right. And so
it's funny. I saw a CNC routing robot and a block of marble, and you don't need humans. You don't need Michelangelo anymore, or whoever doing it. You can just crank a massive CNC machine that just can crank on marble. It's incredible.
Yeah, I know many of us in the space have talked about, you buy a table from IKEA and it's like $500. Well, in the future, you're going to buy, if you want a human-made table, it's going to be $6,000, right? So the things that take human hands are going to cost more.
That will be the coin of the realm. It was handmade, which I guess is kind of it now, but truly handmade, like human-made.
Yeah, maybe what'll happen is like the Amish will be the richest people because they're still doing handmade things, and we go to them because we want that kind of that. It's kind of like the CD versus the record player. People still want record players. They still had like, hey, the sound and the way that it works, it was better. Okay, well then where do we go for human-made stuff? Like, where's it going to be?
Well, so I think we talked about this in 2024, but it was always my assumption last year that this was the year where the salespeople arrive with the tools that were being built by the investments that were being made by the venture capital that was being put in to all these startups. And I think we're about to see a ridiculous amount of practical applications hit the market.
Yeah. Before it was, where's the use case? Where's the use case? There was no real use cases. There was LLMs, and they could do some cool stuff. You could do RAG models, you could do knowledge models, but the perceived value versus the actual value wasn't really there. There's many people using AI and LLMs in the mix of automation and finding some big wins. There's stuff that I talked about over a year and a half ago, and now is being brought back up, like AI spanning, where you use automation to kind of control or be used as the control to then prompt and then do your AI and your summary and your whatnot, and then give it back to automation and then go for the win, because now it's audited, it's controlled. You don't have people or humans injecting different code or prompts in there. There's some wins there. So that's the quick way, right? But then with AI agents and the ones that aren't just doing tasks, the ones that are actually handling goals and actually be able to interconnect between different systems and different APIs and different communities of systems, like, or each other, that's where the orchestration started to come in. And so when you have people talking about like citizen developers or citizen programmers, and then they're going to be working on these AI agents that are actually on their systems with them, that are watching and thriving and understanding where they're going, that's when we start to see the wins. Because then we say, hey, all those years we spent doing Lean Six Sigma, all those years we did Lean IT, ITSM, or ITIL, where, we failed kind of as humans because we don't document very well and we don't share that knowledge. Well, and then also we leave our jobs every 2 years on average. So we move roles or move jobs. And if that happens, you lose tribal data, you lose tribal understanding, you lose business understanding and that leverage. But if AI is in the mix and it's recording at all,
you'll never lose. You'll never lose any of it.
Right.
Well, and the fear of losing an employee is going to start to go away. That there used to be a genuine fear, like somebody says, I'm going to take a new job, and they're just offered more money to stay because it's just cheaper to keep somebody than to try to train somebody new.
Or what about those
at
that
a
retired
bigger number.
and hired back on? Yeah.
So this is the other thing that I think starts to happen in 2025, where all our worst fears begin to start to, with regard to humans being replaced, and because I think the ROI story has to be, I think it's inevitable that it's going to be a cost saving story. I mean, that's the AI story, right? You're not gonna have to hire as many people. The money you pay us, our solution for this AI agent that we're offering you, is going to be made up tenfold in no PTO, no vacation, no benefits, no loss of
Right.
what you just said, no loss of kind of the
Data and
narrative.
monetary data, right? So the whole thing definitely, like, the key point of what you said is the not needing to hire more people, because that has a cost up to itself. And this is what I talk about. Like, it's not fire, it's just don't hire. If they can maintain their current staff, which will attrition themselves, which will leave and change jobs because they're either bored or they want something new or they find a new trade, great. Then that's them. Ideally, you don't want to get rid of your people, but you just don't want to hire more people because you won't need them. Your people are going to be more enabled, right? That's something we can talk about later with, like, is it human in the loop or what is it? So that's a future we can definitely talk to. But in regards to how things work and move, it's just getting faster, and ideally you won't need as many people as you need now, but it's how do we handle that cultural change, which is very key. And that's where it's like a very human first approach.
Well, and again, I think there's two levels of speed involved here. The first level of speed is just the speed of generative AI being able to produce output. But the second evolution of speed is the massive deployment of solutions by humans. It will be humans who will bring all this automation technology to other humans.
Yeah.
And those buyers will be buying at scale, and that will just massively increase not only adoption, but it'll increase more data being generated, more data being pushed into the models, and it's a twofold acceleration. The first is just the raw computational acceleration, but the second will be the adoption acceleration.
Yeah, I think most enterprises are going to start seeing, no matter what, autonomy has to start happening, and they're going to need it. And now it's a matter of how do you start that autonomy lifecycle, and how do you do it in a way that maintains your IP, your intellectual property? How do you do it in a way that you don't lose that information? How do you do it in a way where the people that are building software and applications in your digital enterprise now don't just take that information and go with them somewhere else? And these are some of the big serious things that need to be talked about. Like, how do you maintain IP? How do you maintain security? How do you maintain your entire enterprise and really subvert some of these threats that are going to be out there, which is that's almost a whole nother episode. Digging all that.
Well, while I have you,
Yeah.
But I mean, what are the kind of top line concerns with regard to that? How do you maintain IP? How do you maintain IP? That one strikes me as almost impossible.
At this time, yes, but there are again, like with multi-agent systems or multi-agent frameworks or agents that work in conjunction and orchestrate with each other, you can actually build out a way to understand, like, your corporate branding. What is your IP? What is your main OKR, your goal? What kind of autonomy are you trying to build towards? Once you understand that hierarchy of kind of like how your company works, you actually make it less hierarchical. And if you can do that, that's when you start to really establish the ontology of your company. The what, where, and the why of the data we've talked about when it comes to, like, the autonomous enterprise or building in autonomy. So if you can understand what your people are doing, how they're doing it, are they doing it different ways? Then you get that baseline layer of, like, what do we do? How do we do it? And what makes us special? And then, like, great, now we have the secret sauce of what our IP is, how we handle business, how our brand is out there in the companies, in the space with everyone else. Then you can actually start to defend it, because you can build your AI to understand how to defend it.
I mean, secret sauce, right? That is IP. That your secret sauce is your IP. And I got to believe that these blanket end user license agreements are just not going to fly with certain corporations. That you won't be able to just throw some unreadable monster EULA at people and expect somebody to say, okay. Because ultimately what that is going to say is we're going to take everything that goes into the system and bring it into our large language model, spool it out into more generative AI for all of our other customers. And I don't see how that I don't see how that scales in an enterprise setting when IP is on the line.
In an enterprise setting, it doesn't, because even countries are blocking this right now. The UK has said, no, don't take our data. We don't do that. So anybody that's on LinkedIn in the United Kingdom, guess what? It's not mining their data because it's against their rules. It's against their nomenclatures that they built out there. So that's interesting because in the United States, we're all mined, and this is how this is working. So I think there's going to be a big shift in 2025 of saying like, well, the human side, the person side, the consumer side, they're consistently mined. They become the product. Sadly, we're all going to become products on the very private side. Now, on the business side, they're going to say, hey, no, we're a business. We are not your product. You can't make us that. We have IP. We need to protect our own stuff. How do we do that safely? And that's going to be the biggest question that's going to be talked about, besides some of the security aspects of like how people code, what they're coding with, and how they're storing that code. And is that code being done by AI or is it being done by humans? And how do you merge those two to know if something does change in the future or something that goes into production? How do you roll it back if you don't know what that code was?
Well, and it feels a lot like we're going to end up with AI guarding AI, where you basically are getting defense agents, corporate defenders of data leakage. That you will have agents monitoring the data that's exiting systems into wherever it would exit, because now effectively everything is going to be cloud connected in some way. And you're going to end up with this kind of AI goaltending that is, which is, interesting in and of itself.
It is. It's good that, I mean, we're seeing that on the security side, right? So many security companies I've talked to and the CISOs that are out there, the CISOs, chief information security officers, they're seeing humans can't keep up. We can't monitor logs with human eyes anymore. We have to take action faster. We have to be able to engage faster, know the information, create the honeypots, do the security, augment and survive. Because if not, then what are we going to do? So there is going to be AI watching other AI opportunities that are happening. We're going to see more hacking and more issues with black hats in the future, 2025 that we're in now, where there's no way to keep up. So how do you do that? And so some of the biggest threats are coming. Are we ready for it? And I don't think we are. I don't think any company is. And so, what's the direction forward? The direction forward is to be as protected as you can, but keep an open mind. And that may be along the lines of like bringing in the right people, bringing in the right resources, outsourcing the knowledge that you don't have, or taking those tests and taking those like exploratory like MVPs or pilots and say, let's try something new just in case. It really depends on a company's risk appetite, but is the risk versus reward good enough if you're not protected enough?
Yeah, this is all right. We're going to take a break and chew on that for a moment or two. And when we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about kind of what you've been seeing out there in your travels.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back after this.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.
All right, Doug, we're back, and we closed the year, and you were a part of it, with our full Insight Jam Live 4-day best practices thought leadership event. You were a big part of that, leading a lot of AI discussions and being a part of AI discussions. If anybody wants to see any of that, we have it all on our YouTube channel. But we also have a lot of other content at InsightJam.com. Would encourage everybody to join there, where you can connect directly with folks like Doug Shannon and myself. But you have also been out and about, and you're the reason why you're a thought leader for us is you're out there leading thought. So what have you seen? Where have you been? And what are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the year, I did the Finland Helsinki, which was an one AI summit. That was Europe, which was interesting call outs I can talk about there. But then I was also at the AI summit in New York recently, and that was in December. So the things I'm seeing, especially in the AI space, is it's massively spectrumized. Like the spectrum is huge. Like either people get it or they don't get it, or they're on the level and they know what they're looking for, what's next, or they're still just playing, or in Europe's case, they haven't really been playing with it much at all, and so they're massively behind. And so there's.
Did you say Europe? In Europe's case,
Europe is behind. They.
See, I've been seeing a lot about how Europe is kind of losing the string on a lot of this stuff because they are so regulated or just culturally fearful, or what is it? What do you think? Why do you think?
So it's not fearful. I think that, so if anything, Europe is highly enabled by a couple aspects. They don't get laid off and or fired like we do in the United States. If we don't do our job, we don't show up and we get papered out, like there's a chance to lose our jobs. Europe doesn't really have that fear. And so they're actually able to soak and understand things much more quickly in most cases, especially with automation back like 8 years ago, if not 10 years ago. They were some of the first countries that really took it on and massively scaled because of it. However, when you have regulations and you have these things that come out, like their AI use cases and whatnot, everyone waited. All the companies just waited to see what happened. And it took a long time. And in the heyday of like when everything was really pushing forward and driving, that those companies are like, oh yeah, we're using ChatGPT. It's like, okay, what else? And yeah, you have an API call. Okay, great. What else? Oh, we're not even looking at agents yet, but we hear about it. Or they're still looking at the word agentic and not understand it. Like it's not there yet. Many of the companies that are there that are successful at using AI are still using traditional AI, ML, machine learning libraries. They built it out and they've done it the old-fashioned way, quote unquote old-fashioned, like a couple of years back. But in general, they're not using Gen AI yet. And so, or if they do, it's very, very simple, very antiquated.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of on social media, a lot of statistical analysis of the growth of the technology sector over the past 30 years in the United States versus Europe, and how, for all intents and purposes, coming into the 80s, they were effectively similar in size and aggregate. But because of the risk tolerance and capital and just innovation that's happening in the venture sector of the United States versus, and I think it is a cultural difference. The United States has just massively ballooned. I mean, the largest, unicorn billion-dollar company, it's generated way more billion-dollar companies than the EU for, and that's what people are trying to explain is why is that the case? Because ultimately, demographically, you would argue that it's a very similar cultural mix, but yet from a business culture, it's not the same at all.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say it's like, again, it goes back to like risk appetite. And the thing with Europe versus the United States is Europe has GDPR, and GDPR is, there's a massive fine assigned to anybody that messes with that. And so if you don't do it right, or if you're not within your guidelines, if you're using an LLM to store data as a database, then you have CRF11, like all these different aspects you have to make sure you're paying attention to. And when your LLMs are using different pipelines from different countries, or different areas that you have your data centers in, are they located in Switzerland? Are they located in France? And if they are do you know if you're using tokens in France versus Switzerland? Like what are you doing? And you may not know.
And this is it. This goes back to the kind of, risk reward of more or less regulation and more kind of free flowing innovation, is that you get much more acceleration, much more innovation, much more advancement quicker. But it comes with a bit of a risk as well, because there is this kind of unregulated Wild West culture around this sort of thing, where you've got AI cowboys roaming the range, and in the end, I think what I'd like to talk about in this segment is the implications that has for the human beings that are just going to get caught up in the maelstrom of it all.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely there's definitely ways to talk about that. So I mean, again, like I think the only reason. Like things tried to be slowed down here in the United States. We had like the AI bill that came out and it said, let's have a kill switch. We talked about that on the show, which it turned out to be like, there's no way they were going to do that because the cat's already out of the bag. Like Meta's done that with Llama models. It's like Linux. It's the same thing. It's open source. Everyone has it, just download it on like 3 different systems.
The cat is out of the bag. That's like that's a great phrase. It's like,
right.
What are you going to do?
You can't stop it. You can put it back in the bag. So
toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yeah, and Europe already has Llama models too. So like you can't stop people from doing things. This is why, again, like it's a kind of a security risk. So how does that impact everyone else, right? How does that impact the world at large? There's definitely more things changing. And again, like it's faster, like we talked about in the first segment. And in regards to fastness, one of the big things I talked about near the end of the year was large geospatial models. And this is something that nobody's probably heard of, or those that are in the government industry and talked about like GIS, like geo intelligent systems or satellite systems that look at stuff, right? Now we have LLMs that are driving this to the point where you could take a picture of somebody in the world and basically know what the backside of that building looks like without actually being there. And so there's aspects of that. There's geolocation tagging. There's understanding what the world is around you, building a large digital twin of the world, which would be massively important and make people a lot of money. Google tried to do that with like the Google Maps and like the roads and the cars driving around. Well, now we have it to where humans are doing it for us by playing games like Pokemon. And so they played Pokemon and there's 10 million users and they take pictures of things and they have Pokestops and they go look at those things and those have pictures, and all of these pictures are creating this digital world around us. And so how are we impacted? We're, again, the product. And we're so much the product that we're creating new products from our interfaces that we're interfacing with and making people lots of money. But what do we get from it? We get a subscription cost. We have to buy Pokeballs and we have to go play. Really, like what's going on here? When does the human side and the privatized side of this make money on our own data or make money on the things that we choose to share? That's I think where the future of at least AI regulation should be going in an ethical way, to say, if I want to give you information around Doug Shannon, happy to do so, but it's what I want to give. Maybe my zip code, maybe not my full name, that kind of thing.
Well, again, there's proposals and there's plans and there's bills being filed, but there's also a massive amount of money to be made, and there's a massive amount of money influencing those decisions, and the humans are going to be caught up in, as we always are, right? Yeah. Caught up in the kind of bigger game, where capitalist societies driven by profit and bottom line decide sometimes for the best for us, and sometimes not so much for the best. But actually, I want to talk about a couple of concepts, which is human in the loop, HITL, and human on the loop, if I have that correct, which are two new concepts that are now coming out with regard to. It's like a philosophical approach to training AI.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's really training AI. It's a matter of like how humans are interfacing with the technology around them. And as innovation comes around about, it's the mix is, how do we as humans work with the technology that we have available to us? And the aspects of what I'm seeing is why, instead of human in the loop, where it's a human, classically it's like human says a thing, AI takes a thing and goes with it. Human does another thing, like in and out, in and out, in and out, kind of like a wagon wheel, right? Now, human on the loop is kind of where I see the future going. And what that means is AI is doing a lot of the autonomy, but again, we don't trust AI enough, which we shouldn't, we don't need to, especially since it's an LLM and we're in these cases and it's not fully trusted, even if it's grounded, even if it has RAG models, even if it has the data to fall back to. Yeah. So human on the loop is going to be AI does most of the work, if not like 90% of the work. But the human there is saying, it's like the audit list. It's like, oh, did it do that thing? It pulled that data from there. Yep, I agree with that. Okay, it's about ready to be sent off to one person or another person. Yeah, I agree. Or actually it's these people, not those people. Like the human on the loop is going to be able to say, I know what's happening at all times. I have visibility to know what's happening at all times. I know if the car line is working. I know if there's an issue that may have been pointed out or the threshold of that issue. What happens if, the same thing with like IDP back in the day, like intelligent document processing, when you had the AI says it's 80% good. It understands 80% of what it's looking at, but it may not have the rest of it. Do we trust that? Well, the human's on the loop. They go, let's go take a look at it. What did you see? And then the human goes, oh, wow, you didn't have depth perception, or maybe your color screening was off, or your RGB wasn't right, or the cable wasn't connected. It's actually this. And so therefore we're a part of that audit, and we make it to where the human at the end of the day is responsible for what's going on or what's going out. And that's the future that I see happening.
Well, so I'll be the devil's advocate there. When does that break? Because in the end, I think the whole point of agentic AI is that it will just do that better. It'll not only make less mistakes than humans, even humans monitoring. So if I'm AI, I'm like, well, you can monitor me all you want for right up until I learn how you fail monitoring me. And then it's like, why do I need you monitoring me when I can monitor myself better than you can? And so when does AI just finally just say, you know what, go play more, pickleball at lunch and ride another bike through the campus, the corporate campus, and have another game of ping pong down the break room because I got it. It's all taken care of.
Right. So that's a good aspect, right? So yes, AI is going to learn from when the human is on the loop, and we're working with it and we're driving it, and things that we point out, and it comes to, like, you take a Pareto chart and you go, wow, these top 10 things always happen. Well, we're just going to make it part of the AI to check those things every time.
Well, it's not exactly what's going to happen.
That's what should happen. And so now the cap, like where that to draw a line forward, like how that relates to other things, right? So we can make sense of this for everybody that's watching this too, is we're going to be doing the same thing with robotics. And so as these robots learn a task, just like as we did AI driving a goal here, and we go, hey, it's better if it does this. Hey, it's better that. If I go teach that robot to how to lay floors or how to build a house, it's going to start to learn more and more and more. And then again, it's going to be able to do that autonomously or whatnot. Same thing with this other side. The software is going to be able to do it. The monitor is going to be able to do it. It won't need us as much. Now, what will happen is more people will go off to do other things, hopefully, or train these AIs to do different things, to where eventually, yes, you'll have a supervisor or a head watching what used to be thousands of people's jobs turned into hundreds of people's jobs, turned into 10 people's jobs. And now like a team of 6 people or 4 people watch it just to make sure it's running and have the knowledge.
I would think those are the people that are going to be the easiest to replace, the ones monitoring it, because monitoring is kind of a binary process. I mean, yeah, there's going to be some troubleshooting if something goes wrong, which, we in theory are great at, but are we? I mean, when you compare it to what is capable, are we really? I know we like to think so, but are we really going to be any match for what AI can do in terms of cycles of troubleshooting and improvement and
I mean,
iteration?
sadly, there's still the need of, if the power switch is off or it's unplugged, you might have to plug it back in. But in general, I do see it to where you'd have probably 4 people running a whole area, if not a whole part of the globe. And those people could just dial in to a robot and go physically turn it on at whatever factory is there, or they could go show up in person and go handle something that needed to be manually done by a human. But you need people to make sure, like that tribal knowledge, things are being secure, things are being stored, and to look at the data. You still need data analytics. You still need people to understand the data to feed the downstream, or like that upstream downstream relationship still has to happen. So you get the information, but how a human analyzes information is much different than what a AI would do. And that's where it goes into like medical, right?
Yeah, I wonder about that. That's where I fall off the wagon. It's like, do we really, or do we just only know that we do it that way and that's the best way? But do we really do it better than AI would?
If we don't, then I fear for the future, because then we'll just be told what to do and what to eat and what to wear and what the
or we won't have to worry about that sort of thing. It's like products and services are being delivered and values being created at such a low cost, basically the cost of energy. And in theory, the cost of energy will go down from that.
Some of the smartest people wore the same clothes over and over again. Einstein, Jobs with his, turtleneck. Like, do we, maybe we say this is my style and that's the way it goes, and then everything's more normalized. I mean, kids do really well in schools that have dress codes, right? And so they have either certain colors or they have uniforms, and they actually thrive. And maybe it's because of that, or maybe it's because the schools actually take a different approach. But we're seeing some interesting things in those areas, but it's a lot of speculation, right? I'm not an expert in those areas.
So you're seeing, so you believe we're going to end up with humans on the loop, not in the loop? Is that, and can you just, before we kind of seal up this segment, what's the difference there? What is the difference between in the loop and on the loop?
Well, it's kind of like, again, it's almost like self-driving cars, right? So you have like level 1 through 5, and it's level 1. It only watches if you're in the right lane or not. Like it's, you might be, it sends like a bell. Hey, you need to wake up or something. Level 2 is like, it can actually autocorrect for you. Level 3 is, well, it can actually drive, but assisted, and then level 4 is like, it can fully autonomously drive, but it still likes you to kind of be in the car and attentive, like at least looking forward. So if you see something, or like the Waymo that just hit like the little driving cart thing that was crossing the crosswalk, because it wasn't a human, it was shorter. It hit it because it didn't know any different. Like, technology is changing so fast. How are the AI systems going to keep up with the world around us when you have, the drones that are in China flying down and delivering drink orders, or all these other systems are coming in? Like, they can't train fast enough as well. So you still need a human somewhere in there to be able to handle like the context. And this is what I talk a lot about. It's like, humans bring context where AI systems and stuff don't. This is why companies are mining our data. We type something out, I put something on LinkedIn, I put something out in the world. Guess what? It's being mined, and now it's part of somebody's AI logic somewhere, and then people can search that thing. So it's very interesting how that future is going to work. I still think humans, and this is why I talk about a human first functionality. Like, we need humans to be responsible. We need humans to be thought of, because if in the world where we are not the smartest thing out there, where we are not the ones driving the day in and day out of a business, where do we fit in? And we need to take a look at that first, go, where does that fit? How do we maintain that? And I think human on loop is going to be that aspect of, we become the auto control. We become the contextual understanding that, oh, darn, the Waymo car hit that thing. How do we add that in? Can we go code that? Can we have the AI code that? Do we need to address that? Is there a model drift issue? Is there a version control issue? How are we maintaining that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, that example is as good as any of where people will want a human held accountable. Ultimately, it won't be good enough to just say, well, it was just a self-driving thing that made a mistake.
If the human's not held accountable, how do you count the company? Like, is the company accountable then? If AI is just AI code, then again, people could just be creating code and creating all kinds of bad things. Who's accountable? Someone has to be.
There's that happening too. But we'll get into maybe we'll get into that next. But we're gonna take a break, and when we get back, we'll wrap up our inaugural 2025 episode.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out.
All right, Doug, we're back, and I think all these conversations that we're having right now lead to the question of leadership and what companies need at the top to be able to handle this incredibly complex and nuanced evolution conversation opportunity to profit and advance. And I think the new hot term is Chief AI Officer, CAIO. And what are you seeing there? I mean, is this something that's being adopted? Are you seeing companies start to organize around that thinking?
Yeah, sometimes I joke with it. It's like CIO is like chow. So, but in general, I've seen there's a lot of people looking for this. Right? There's companies that are selling this as a service now. They're saying we're collecting all the experts and we're going to put them all together and we're going to sell them to you as individual workers. And so because there is a deficit in who are the people, who's the experts, who's out there, who knows the stuff, who can actually talk to it, who's keeping up with that 6-month going to be 3-month timeline to really drive this forward with knowing what's good, what's not, and where to go, where to move so you don't make the wrong moves. That's why you have a chief anybody officer, is to go, what's the path we should take, and how are you going to lead us down that path? The problem is, just like Moore's Law, just like we talked about, the speed of now, how are you going to, my thing is, how are you going to take the same approach that you did previously and bring on a officer at that level, at that C-suite level, and expect different results? You're going to get someone, again, these are my perspectives, but you're going to get somebody coming in at a C-suite level. They're going to have their plan. They're going to have their understanding, their perspective, and they're going to have their journey, their path, and say, this is the way we're going to go. That's my way or the highway. I'm at the C-suite level. Everything kind of rolls downhill from there. Is that what we want? Is that fast enough? Because that seems very antiquated to me. So my thought process here is, I would say you have a look at fractional CAIOs. You bring in multiples for the same, you bring 2 to 3 at the same price as you would one individual. Or you do it in a way you bring 2, but you hire in a CDO, a chief digital officer, that's actually the main person that stays, that understands the OKRs. What are you driving towards? And then those fractionals report to them because they're out there, they're learning, they're driving, they're working even with other companies, or they're working with other industries, and they're able to bring those insights in. That's the direction I think should go.
It's interesting because in a perfect world, it doesn't always work this way, but I think you want somebody who understands your culture. You almost want to bring somebody up into the C-suite from some internal career path, because they at least get what the essence of the organization is about and what the purpose and meaning of the product is. Maybe it is somebody coming up through the product path to understand. They have an understanding of the customers and marketing and so forth, and then can layer in this automation. And it also strikes me that, what do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about the idea of bringing somebody up rather than bringing somebody in, via helicopter?
There's a chance, right? I mean, bringing somebody up from internally in the company to a CIO slot. That's what some companies have done this. And I think that might be, it depends on the person. It always depends on the perspective of the person. Of course. Are they the right person? Are they a thought leader that's out there? I would even say, even in my own stance, I would say, don't bring me in as a CIO, because there's no way I'm going to know everything. But that's where I say, which you would actually bring in like a CDO and say, this digital officer is driving this aspect. They understand the political landscape inside of your company. They understand the cultural wins, the OKRs, the what's going on, the what are we tapping in next to, or where are we driving to the next goal. That person should be driving the goal. And then these other people report to that person and say, we're going to bring in the newest of the new. And then we as a team define on what do we pilot, what do we drive, what do we like, kill off, what do we say, like, let's not go that direction yet, but we know it's out there. But at least you have the visibility and the perspective of knowing like what is available or where the market may be going. And this is where public companies versus private companies, you always have a different, again, like appetite. Like public companies like, let's try the newest bleeding edge, go. And then private companies like, let's let them go screw up and then we'll go do what we want to do because we don't want to waste the money. And that's kind of the way it works. So there's aspects to know, like when different people are either watching this or talking to us or talking to myself, that's what you have to understand, like where are you coming from? And understanding their perspective is how you can address kind of some of their fears and what they're looking at.
Well, and to your point with regard to the inability for any one person to truly understand the ramifications of everything that's happening at this breakneck pace. I think as much as I think sometimes we all want to make fun of large consulting companies as maybe not the best solution. I think this is where they have a great selling proposition to be able to make right now, which is we are doing this across multiple organizations. We're seeing things that you could never see, that no one person could see. Our global consulting organization is not only participating, but we're sharing internally, learning and now can bring that to bear rapidly. And really, it's just a matter of, how many consultants on that team you want to bring in. It's just a dollar amount at that point. I mean, it feels like the McKinseys of the world are going to ultimately win in this environment.
Yeah, I mean, you still need someone internally, again, to your points about the brand and the understanding of the drive and the culture to drive that consultant group to the right path. And so that's the same kind of.
Do you have that in a CTO already though? And so you don't necessarily need that CAIO type.
I think that when it comes
or even
to
a CEO for that matter.
Well, and the CEOs, it depends again on the company and the culture of that company. Some of them are insulated, some of them are very much in the mix, some of them are just there for figureheads. Like it depends on how they work that out. I mean, a CTO, Chief Technology Officer, or a CSO, or Chief Security Officer, or CISO. But in general, it depends on how the company's set up. But most companies, when you have the main three, like your CFO, CEO, and CTO, right? You still have, maybe they've been there 10 plus years and they say, well, this is the way we've always done business. And or if a company, if you're at a company right now and they say, we are not a digital company, we are blah, or we are just services, or we are just this specific product, that's not going to last in the future. So everybody needs to be in the IT, in the world digital space, looking to digitize, looking to build AI, looking to automate, to drive autonomy. If they are not, they're going to be gone. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah. So what's the risk here for a company that can't quite pull the trigger or can't quite see the future? I mean, how quickly is this all going to start to slip away for companies that just aren't in gear?
That's hard because it takes time for people to move. It takes time for something to take a hold. Now, as things move so fast as the way that the speed that they're moving, it's hard to say. Cause right now, my thought process on this, and I've talked to other people, is that enterprises that are driving things now, they have a certain way that they handle things. Like, oh, hey, we need to make more money this quarter. Let's lay off some people. We've seen that in the news. It's not new news. I'm not telling anybody nothing nobody knows. So, but then the other aspect is, how do enterprises, since they move like a very large ship in a canal and they try to go one way or the other and it takes a long time to move that ship, how do they soak that? Like, how do they handle that? And I've done acquisitions for years, and really that's how they do it. They'll say, that startup there has something we need, or that startup over there is a strategic acquisition because we don't want our opponents getting it. Well, that's the old days. The problem is now, with the speed of things moving, A startup becomes a small business, becomes a medium to large business very quickly. And a startup that you would buy for $1 million or acquire them for $1 million or $2 million or 10, those all become hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion. We're seeing the unicorns, we're seeing all these things. So how many of those can you acquire now without going bankrupt yourself? Is that pot that you used to go dip your hand in and say, we can fix this, we can move that shit faster, is that still there? No, it's not going to be. So then what are your options? Technically, I don't know many other options. So you're either going to make the moves or you're not. Someone at one of the recent conventions I went to or events I went to said in the next 2 years, 40% of the S&P may be wiped out. That's a huge number.
Is that right? Did they really say that?
They said
Holy
that,
mackerel.
and I had to move my seat back. I was like, "Whoa, hold on! Like, where do you get this from?" And they had some interesting insights, and I said, "Okay, I still don't think it'll be that fast, but I can say with the next 10, 20 years, because I don't want to be a naysayer, but in general, like, there are risks there is the point. The point is, like, there are risks, and if your appetite is too much, you may have risk that way. If your appetite is not enough, you have risk of being, either you're gone. Like, so take risks is the point. Do the work, do the pilots, see what you can win, and bring in the right people to do that. And then therefore, at least you're not trying. It's like global warming. if you believe it or not, fine. If you thwart some of the stuff that is happening, well, maybe you get a little bit longer to figure out if it is real or not. So like, you got to try something.
So let's offer up some advice here. I mean, 2025 is on. New Year's resolutions are being made and broken. Yeah. But if you were to offer up a piece of advice to somebody who's just getting back to work this week and starting to think through, okay, this AI thing's been a sticky note on my desk for some time now. I need to do something about this. What do I do? Is there a good step to take at this point? I mean, assuming everybody's taking some steps, but what would you say?
Yeah, I would say in general, the same thing that I told many people in Europe was like, start using it in your daily lives. Even if you're using the free version, use the free version, get your feet wet, start talking to it, just have a conversation with it, see where that goes. Start to understand how it thinks and how it takes your information. Some people are still talking about like, go learn prompting. Sure, but ideally when you talk to it, you're already prompting. So just learn to ask the right questions. Don't, and some people are still talking about hallucinations. Hallucinations isn't really a thing anymore. It is, but it isn't. But like, if you're going to ask it to bring about unicorns again, and did they live in the ash trees in London and stuff, like if you're going to ask it hallucinating type of questions or ask it something that is just known, there are either bias in the data or whatnot, you're going to get hallucinations. So tailor to what you know. There's also histories now available, and so it'll actually start tracking like what you're saying for reasons to understand you. So it's trying to understand like the history of your prompts and the history of the conversations you've had, and then it starts to have a better cohesive conversation with you. And so as you talk to it, you find it can do more things. And then as you talk to it, ask it things like, I see people online say like, what do you think about Doug Shannon? What do you think about, me? Or what about this space? Or, if you were to draw, my life of what we've talked about, what does it look like in AI? And it'll give you a picture. And then it starts to give you a better insight onto how and what things can you do and what should you take and take out, and understand that it is still very much like kind of like the Wikipedia of AI. Don't trust it 100%, but understand that you're going to have to put the work in and really validate it and add that context as a human.
Yeah. And again, I think, generative AI is, and now some of the tools that are coming out of the generative AI companies are not really the ones that are going to be the needle movers, because they're almost too loose in terms of what they can do. My advice would be to take every meeting that you're offered with regard to seeing solutions that are coming to the market. Because the baked solutions that are going to come to the market are going to be very purposefully built. They're going to use all this technology that is, magic but it's going to be directed magic. So it's going to be able to, do one thing really, really well from all the, magic that exists in the AI world. And I think people really need to see the practical nature of it and have it very specifically mission driven rather than, okay, I think and this is the thing that I struggle with. It's like, how do you know what to do with it when you've been presented with the ability to do anything? And until somebody comes along and says, here, this is what you'll do with it, it almost feels like you're just kind of, I don't know.
I mean, that's what businesses are not picking up very fast, right? So, and that's why I say just talk to it. The best way is to familiarize yourself with it, because that's the future. And if the other thing I would like tell businesses at the end of this is just say, like, don't just go for things that are just known and you hear about, like RAG models, and don't just like RAG models are now part of pretty much everything. If any solution you buy is going to have a RAG model, and it's going to have a way to talk to your data. Look for what's next. And I would actually tell you, future-wise of 2025, start talking to your people and start talking to your legal people about what does it look like when multi-agent systems, multi-agent frameworks, and these AI agents are sitting on the system with your user. Are they going to be okay with that? Should we start normalizing that now, because they're going to be there? And they're going to be there because that's how your business is going to get done faster, better. And they're going to talk to one another, and this framework's going to talk to one another. And that's the future forward. And just don't just sit back on your laurels, because you might not be there, and you're going to have more issues and play catch up. And catch up is not as easy when you can't squeeze it out of the bottle. So,
all right. Well, another good hour conversation, Doug. Always a pleasure. Thanks very much for all your help last year with not only this podcast, but all the Insight Jam advice you provided us over the year, and certainly all the great participation you had in the Insight Jam live event we had in December. And if anybody wants to see more of Doug Shannon, and you should, obviously stay tuned to this podcast, but check out some of the videos that we did, some of the panel discussions and keynotes, because it was really it was a tour de force of massive information.
I mean, I learned some stuff in like too, which was great. I was like, whoa, who is that? And I was like, I'm gonna start following that person, because I want to see like more of what they had to say. So yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. All right, well, great. Well, looking forward to having another conversation shortly. But otherwise, it's a pleasure to have you back, and good to see you. And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy 2025.